Good morning and welcome to Lattes and Leaders with Dr. Brad Johnson, best-selling author and accomplished public speaker specializing in education and educational leadership. I am your co-host, Jeremy Johnson, organizational psychology consultant specializing in career coaching, training, and development. Meet us here each week to discuss topics in education and leadership and meet with some of the top education talent and thought partners from across the globe. So grab your latte, sit back, and enjoy a relaxed conversation that will leave you informed and encouraged.
Good morning and welcome to Lattes and Leaders. We have a very special guest with us today, Dr. Laurie Barron. She is from the great state of Montana. So welcome to Lattes and Leaders.
Thank you so much. Honored to be here. Excited to share with you today.
Awesome. Yeah. So let's just jump right into a little bit about your journey to where you are now. You're a superintendent, but share a little bit about how you got to that point.
Yeah, so this is my 29th year in education. I grew up in Georgia and spent the first 17 years of my career in the Coweta County school system in Noonan, Georgia. I'm a big Georgia Bulldog fan. My heart is still hurting over last week's game. I spent 6 years as a high school English teacher, 2 years as a middle school assistant principal, and then 9 years as a middle school principal at Smoky Road Middle School in Noonan, Georgia. And my family and I had vacationed for many years in the beautiful Flathead Valley in northwest Montana. And we got tired of going home from vacation. And so we decided to follow a dream and not wait until retirement. And in 2013, we moved to northwest Montana. And I am serving as the superintendent of the Evergreen School District in Kalispell, Montana. And this is my 12th year here. And our family loves the outdoor lifestyle. We do a lot of skiing and hiking and floating and camping, and it's been incredible to live here. But my roots started in Georgia, and I'm very proud of the work that I was able to do there and all that I learned there. And now I'm in year 12 here, so year 29 overall.
Wow, that's amazing. I just want to know, have you gotten used to the cold weather yet?
You know, we love it. I will tell you, one of the most expensive parts of moving here was buying new clothing. We have real seasons here. There are different seasons, a lot of new footwear, a lot of new jackets. But yeah, so it's not quite that cold here right now. We're in the low, I don't know, maybe high 20s right now, low 30s. Our family who's still in Georgia said yesterday it feels like 19. So I think that Georgia was actually colder yesterday than Montana. But
Wow.
we love it. Yeah, we love it.
Awesome. That's great. Well, I know you've written a few books, and one of them has really done well about belonging. Do you want to share a little bit about that, kind of how it came about and how you implement that into your district?
Yeah, sure. My colleague and I, Patty Kinney, she's in Oregon, and she and I have enjoyed writing together over the years, and we've written several books together. We've published 4 books. We're on our 5th one right now, but our heart and passion has really found its foundation in that whole concept of belonging. We had the opportunity in 2021 to write We Belong, 50 Strategies to Create Community and Revolutionize Classroom Management that ASCD published. And then just this September 24, we published our 2nd edition of The Successful Middle School, A Place to Belong and Become. I've seen so many opportunities when I was a classroom teacher, when I was a building administrator, as a school superintendent, where so often we go after that goal first of improving outcomes for students, which is important, right? We want to, but I'm a big believer in, the first outcome we need is we got to get them to school. We can't do anything if they're not here. And then once we're here, they've got to feel safe mentally and physically. And then once they feel safe, we've got to build those relationships. We've got to let them know they matter. We notice that they're here. When they're not here, it makes a difference. We care about them, and then we can teach them. And I think so often we jump at, how do we improve math? What do we do to improve reading? And if you haven't worked on those first 3 first, which is that kind of essence of belonging, it can be fruitless. to go after just the academics. And so my passion is that concept of really helping kids find a place to belong. And again, belonging is rooted in so many different things. It's not just, oh, I feel good. Oh, let's all sit in a circle and sing songs. It's, do I matter? Do I feel safe here? Do I feel heard? Do I have a voice? Does how I feel impact what happens here? So often kids are in school and it happens to them, right? The adults are the ones making all the decisions. And so whenever we can turn it around where they're a part of what's happening instead of it just happening to them, they're much more likely to engage in the learning process. And you know what happens? Math and reading increase, as do science and social studies. And I'm a big, big believer, and I'll take anyone to task on this. I am a big believer that everything has equal importance in school. I get frustrated sometimes when we overemphasize one subject over the other. And I was a high school English teacher, so I'm very, very passionate about the English language arts. But I believe that football is just as important. I believe that chess club, band, drama, science, chess, whatever it is, what engages that student so that student wants to be there, that's the ticket, right? Whatever it is that gets the kid where he or she wants to be at school, wants to be in class, then they're much more likely to want to learn. And so I think when we can give equal value to what matters to a kid and we make schools about what kids care about, then we know it's important they understand how to read. Of course, we need literate students coming out of school, right? But it's much easier to get them to want to learn those skills when they know they matter and they belong and we care about what they care about. And so that's been a big focus of mine over the years. And I really enjoy being able to research it, delve into it more, and actually see it in practice.
Absolutely. And I mean, that's my belief as well. And when you think of, we call them electives, but they're all important, but every piece of school is so important. And to some student, every piece is the most important piece to them, some piece, whether it is PE or math, or like you said, even the extracurriculars. There's a student that comes to school because of that reason more than any other. And so it doesn't do us any good to kind of overlook that or to not see the importance of that.
And I think sometimes students, they don't just come to school for that other activity. They tolerate stuff they don't want to do for that other activity. I think I was a really good English teacher. I think I'd be better now. I want to apologize to my students early on, right? But there were students who, even though I loved teaching and had great relationships with my students, English wasn't their favorite class, right? But they had to pass it to be eligible to participate. Okay. Whatever it is that motivates a student to be there and want to learn. And of course, you've got to work really hard as a teacher to give value to what you're teaching, not just because it's going to be on the test or it's in some state's content standard that kids don't care about. But when we can say, hey, I value what you value, and you build that relationship and you establish that foundation of belonging, kids are much more likely to give you the opportunity and respect to start to value what you value, right? And so
Absolutely.
It's that mutual relationship. It's not, hey, kids need to do their part and I'll do my part. Yes, we all need to do our part. But sometimes we have to be the ones to initiate first. These are young, growing, their executive functioning is not complete. Their brains aren't fully developed. We are fully educated, grown professional adults. And sometimes we have to make more of the effort to get that relationship started so that you end up having some reciprocity of students wanting to be there and wanting to learn. And sometimes it's not because they like the subject. My daughter, she's in college now, but when she was in middle school and high school, she was not a fan of music. She's an athlete. But she had to take an orchestra class. It was part of their requirement in 6th grade. Well, you know what? She loved that teacher. She never loved orchestra. We still own a viola, but she never loved orchestra. She played in orchestra for 7 years. Ended up playing first year viola her junior and senior year, and it wasn't because of the subject. She loved that teacher. And when she got in there and how that teacher made her feel and she's not a musician. That's not her thing. I think it was so valuable for her to learn music and learn how to read, and she can still play that. And I think it helped her be much more well-rounded. And I'm so glad she did it. But she wouldn't have done it had it not been for the teacher. And so there are so many times we can get kids to come to our subject and to learn what we know is important for content foundation through relationships instead of we just have to check this off.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Because, not every subject's going to be their favorite, but just having that connection with the teacher to, keep them engaged. And we always talk about relevance, but it's even more than that because it really is about the relationship. Because I always like to use the example, as adults, we know it's very relevant for us to eat healthy and to exercise regularly. But how many of us do it?
Right.
Even though we
Yes.
know it's very relevant for our life.
I feel like I need to sit up a little, a little better here. Yeah, it's so true. I just feel like, and I see so many teachers do it too. I don't see this huge gap where we don't have staff doing this, right? I think we do have staff making active efforts to make learning meaningful and relevant to kids, right? I just think there's so much more that we have to do to make that happen than maybe we did in the past. I mean, I've been in education for 29 years, 2 different states, 2 very different districts, a suburb of Atlanta versus a rural area, although we're kind of considered urban where we are in Montana by Montana standards. But I think that now there's so many things going on with kids that it can be frustrating because it takes longer to get to perhaps teaching content than what we would like. But, if we can get them here, ensure they feel safe, ensure they feel valued, build those relationships, then it's a lot easier to teach them.
Well, one of the things I really think is a big piece of this that we very rarely talk about, but we're vying for their attention much more intensely than ever before. I remember even going to school, just now, it was a long time ago now. It doesn't seem that long to me thinking back, but you think of the 70s and the 80s, it is a long time ago now, but, they didn't really have to vie for our attention. But now kids are so inundated with so much information, the white noise that we talk about. I remember sharing one time that, when we think about children today, they are bombarded with more information by the time they start school than their grandparents were by the time they graduated school. So it's a totally different, animal that we're dealing with, education, not the students, of trying to do that, of trying to, get their attention and tune out a lot of this white noise and help them focus. It's overwhelming to them.
Yeah, I think about just the impact, and in our book that we just published in September, we bring a lot of attention to this, and it's not just young adolescents, right? This impacts adults. So if it impacts adults, imagine how much it impacts our young adolescents and our adolescents whose brains aren't fully developed, right? But the impact of social media on students, even just in my time as a superintendent, I've seen it increase. And that idea of looking for constant affirmation, I can't miss out on checking that post. Did people like my post? And then the behind the scenes, of the disruptions to school that happen as a result of online behind the keyboard interactions that happen outside of school. It's almost hard. I mean, I guess people in it know that, right? But it just wasn't like that. I sound really old. When I started teaching, that wasn't part of what we did. And I'm so grateful I didn't grow up in the era of everything I did being videoed and captured and shared and judged. And adults are under this constant screen of judgment and feeling like they have to connect. And scroll. And I think adults have a hard time with it. I mean, look at some of what adults post on social media, right? I mean, it's horrid, right? So you can only imagine filtering down to kids who don't have the same skill sets or same brain development. So that impact, then they come to school and they've had this fight on social media, or someone said something ugly about them, or someone shared an inappropriate picture of them. You want to talk about trying to get back to belonging? Oh my word. We're trying to work on things that happen outside of school so that schools can be successful. And it's just become much more of a responsibility for educators than what it was in the past.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, I don't think we do enough in really appreciating what their teachers do every day, and the parents, all of them, the whole staff, even the building principals, just there's so much that they deal with that most adults look at the school and just have the frame of reference of when they went 10 or 20 years ago and have no clue what the world is today there. So you're exactly right.
One of the things that we're doing, and we did this when I was a principal too, so this isn't a social media result, but we work really hard to recognize students in, I will call it 5 areas. And, we did A's because it's easier, but we look at attendance, attitude, academics, athletics, activities, and arts, right? So we want to look at all those things that help a student be well-rounded. And, they got to get here. There's your attendance. We want, good citizens. If I had to pick one of all those, I'm going for attitude every day. I'm going for attitude, right? I want to raise good citizens who can give back to and not take away from their communities, right? And then we want them to be academically successful. And we know that academics, arts, and activities contribute to that. And so when we can look at those areas and recognize students, not just for achievement in those areas, because we do have some really high achievers, right? But also look at students' growth in those areas. Maybe it's a student who struggled coming to school for the whole first semester, and second semester, that student's coming to school. How are we recognizing that, right? And so looking at all those areas that help contribute to being a well-rounded, successful individual with improved outcomes, and then how can we recognize high achievement and growth achievement in those areas in our kids, so that we're looking at things that matter to them and things that matter to the adults, right? And we're putting them all together and recognizing that. And I think that, and it's genuine recognition. It's not, superficial as much, and really trying to say, hey, you matter, and what you believe in matters, and what we believe in matters too, right? We know you got to learn this content. We know It's important to be here and to learn how to socialize and to understand all these skills you're supposed to learn. But putting all those on an equal playing field and saying all of those are important to overall success, I think really increases a student's sense of belonging. And it's not just, I've got to make all A's or be, advanced in everything. It's also, I can demonstrate strong growth in those areas too.
Well, I love that. I love what you're doing. I love that concept. What's one thing you would share with maybe someone that's wanting to move into administration in this day and age, or maybe that's new to administration and maybe struggling? And you can take a minute to think about it, but what would be maybe just one piece of advice, or maybe something you experienced or went through that helped you to kind of be successful for this long? Because you talk about being in your role for 12 years as a superintendent. That's a rarity in today's culture. The turnover rate of superintendents is higher than even teachers and principals. So what would be that one piece of advice that you would share?
First I have to say I work with an incredible board. I have the same 5 who hired me 12 years ago, and we've had 2 additional added since then. But I have a great staff, and that stability makes a big difference in longevity. And so I'm very blessed and grateful for that. There's so many things that come to mind, but I think that 2 that I would share, and actually it's really just one. It's overall engagement with staff and students. If I had to pick one thing, I think it becomes so challenging as a building or district system leader when there are so many things going on. And, we have to manage before we can lead. If there's a huge food fight in the cafeteria, you don't really care about going to observe a great math lesson because you're trying to decrease the food fight fallout, right? You can't get to the math lesson. And so the better we can manage, the more opportunity we have for leading. And so a big thing I would say focus on as a leader, whether you're in a building or in a district, is that engagement with staff and students, because you're building relationships, right? You're getting to know people. You're letting them see you value them. And when you look at it, you've got to have an intentional method to ensure that engagement happens, right? We really focus on in our district daily building walks, weekly classroom visits, quarterly classroom visits with feedback. We do semester check-ins with every single employee. And all that's informal outside of the formal evaluation process of observing a lesson. By the time we observe a lesson for actual evaluative feedback, we have such a camaraderie and relationship with that teacher. We've seen them teach a whole bunch before we get to that. And so that engagement of being visible and giving yourself tools to hold yourself accountable for that, we have a way that we keep up with that, and making sure that you don't let the food fight in the cafeteria be an excuse not to be in classrooms, that you don't let the buses coming in late keep you from sitting down with staff and checking in. And so the better you can manage, the more time you have for leadership, but you've got to be intentional with that engagement with leadership. I will tell you, some of the best advice I got as a first year principal, so this has been many years ago now, my assistant superintendent said, if you are not doing discipline as the principal, you're not a full leader in the building. And at that time, by the way, I had just come out of being an assistant principal and felt like I had done my dues, right, of doing discipline every day. And I wasn't doing formal discipline. And I took back over a portion of the discipline as the principal, and I did for 8 years after that. We can't just delegate duties out and not stay engaged in what's happening. You should be at lunch duty. That's not a delegate out thing. That's where you meet kids. That's where you find out all the gossip. That's when you find out if somebody's going to do something negative, right? You got to do lunch duty every day. You have to engage with staff and students. And it can be so hard because there are so many unintended things that come up every day. So that day you don't make it to lunch duty, but you're sure someone else is there, because obviously you got to have supervision. It's not a big deal because you just missed it one day, because you're always at lunch duty, right? That's just one example. But finding a way to make sure you stay engaged with staff and students and you don't just get locked down in your office dealing with all the negative managerial duties is hard, but essential to being successful in leadership.
I love that. And I think you're 100% right. And part of that, I think, may be that they're comfortable with the duties and in the office and working on logistics, and maybe they're uncomfortable with the interaction as a leader. But like you said, that really is the most important piece.
Yeah, you're getting to know your people, but you're also building credibility for understanding what they're going through.
Absolutely.
I haven't been a classroom teacher for many years now, right? So if I'm offering professional learning or guidance to staff on classroom strategies, I got to have some kind of credibility. Right. And so I think it's just really important. The top priority of a building leader, of course, is going to be safety, right? But I go back to get them there, keep them safe, make them feel valued, teach them, right? And while you're doing that, you've got to engage with staff and students. And the better manager you are, the more time you'll have to lead.
Awesome. Wonderful. Yeah, I think that is great advice. Thank you for sharing that. So just 2 more questions. We're almost done. Was there a teacher in your past that really impacted you? And it may be more than one, but is there one that really just stood out and made a difference in your life's journey?
Yes, first of all. There's really 3, so I have to say them all, and then I'll just focus on one. So Sissy Bunch, who was my 2nd grade teacher, I did not want to be in her class. I'd heard there was this other teacher, and I wanted to be in that other teacher's class. When I walked in, I cried. She gave me a present for my high school graduation. I'll never forget it. We stayed in touch throughout that whole thing, and a strong impact on me in my formative years. And then Monty Beaver, who was my ninth grade citizenship civics teacher, who was the first teacher who really made learning fun for me. I got to argue and debate, and I like to talk a lot. He was just an incredible influence. I had so many influences, but one that really, really stands out was my 12th grade advanced placement English teacher. I had planned to do something different in life. I'd already planned a different pathway for my post-secondary and college and education. And being in her class, I just wanted to be her every day. And I changed my major and went to school at the University of Georgia to be an English teacher because of Christy Hill. And so she has been an incredible source of inspiration and passion. And I love literature. I love writing. I love all of that stuff. And I saw her passion in it. And I thought I wasn't a reader. And she just changed my entire perspective on how engaging and impactful a class could be at that level. And it changed my major. It changed my entire career. So Christy Hill was a huge impact on me.
That is awesome. That's awesome.
And
I love to hear those stories.
That one stands out.
Awesome. I love that. All right. So final question. This is a tough one, but it ought to be a good one or an easy one for you since you're way up there in Montana. But what is your hot beverage of choice?
My hot beverage of choice would be a caramel latte.
Ooh. Single
shot, though. Anybody who knows me well, you can only take so much of Laurie, and you can't put too much caffeine in here, right? You gotta keep it no caffeine after 10 a.m. I'm a lot to deal with anyway, and so you got to keep it low key. But I like a good caramel latte. Yeah, but it's funny. That's a specialty drink. I drink English breakfast tea every morning.
Okay.
So, yep, English breakfast tea with sweet cream every morning, 2 cups. So that's my standard, but my specialty would be a caramel latte.
I gotcha. Yeah. Mine is a chai latte, but I very rarely have them, maybe once every couple of months or something. So
that's me with my caramel latte. It's a treat, right? Every now and then. My standard is English breakfast tea. It's good stuff.
Awesome.
Gets me going.
You need something up there to start those days.
Yes. I know we've got a lot of snow. The skiing has been fantastic this year. Super appreciative of that, and this life I get to live. I love being in a place I love with the people I love, doing what I love. And so really grateful for the opportunity to be in this profession and to support public education and to work with the staff and families and community I get to here in Evergreen. I feel really blessed.
That's awesome. Yeah. Man, you can't ask for more than that.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for being on today. I appreciate it, sharing your story, your book, and we'll post that and share that when we post this. But just thank you so much for sharing a little bit of yourself, of your time, and just taking the time to be with us today.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's always enjoyable to share with other people who have similar passions.
This has been Lattes and Leaders with Dr. Brad Johnson. We hope that you leave today feeling informed and inspired. For more educational content, be sure to add this podcast to your list and follow Dr. Johnson on any and all social media platforms. For more information on Dr. Johnson, Jeremy Johnson, and special guest, check out drbradjohnson.com. That is DOCTOR, bradjohnson.com. Hope to have you back soon.